Let me ask you something. Have you ever built something from the ground up, brick by brick, with your sweat and sleepless nights, only to have someone else smile for the cameras and take all the credit? It feels like watching someone else receive your diploma at graduation, deliver your speech, and sign your name at the bottom of a check they didn't earn. That's where this story begins. But don't scroll away, because by the end of this video, you'll find out exactly how I turned the tables on the person I trusted the most, my own brother. What started as betrayal turned into a masterclass in revenge, silent, surgical, and poetic. You came here for the truth. And trust me, you're going to get it. This isn't just another story about sibling rivalry or business gone wrong.
No.
This is about identity theft on a soul level, where the face that smiles next to you in family photos is the same one secretly plotting how to become you without ever lifting a finger. I'm going to take you into the heart of a business that was born in my basement but almost died in my brother's boardroom. And you'll see how one decision, one clever, perfectly timed move, put me back in control and turned his carefully planned exit into the very trap he built for me. Now, before we go any further, I want you to picture something. You're sitting at your kitchen table, laptop open, bills scattered, an empty coffee mug by your elbow. You've just poured your entire bank account and a little of your sanity into an idea no one believes in. Your friends think you're crazy. Your parents send job listings. Even your girlfriend is beginning to question your life choices. But still, you code. You research. You pitch. You sacrifice. Because you know that this startup is your way out. Your way up. Your way forward. And then, the moment it catches fire, the person who steps up to the podium and says, "I built this," isn't you. It's your brother.
Yeah.
Let that sink in. But this isn't a sob story. And I'm not here for pity. I'm here because I want to show you how even when the people closest to you try to erase your name from your own legacy, you can still write the ending. You can still win. You just have to be patient enough to let them underestimate you, and smart enough to let them dig their own grave. Because sometimes revenge isn't loud. It's cold, quiet, and calculated. And it tastes a whole lot like poetic justice. My name is Alex Monroe. I'm 33 years old, and I live in San Diego, California. For most of my life, I shared everything with my older brother, Tyler. We were those classic American siblings, close in age, always competing, but in that way that's supposed to make you better. He was louder, more charming, the golden child who could talk his way out of anything.
Me?
I was the quieter one, the builder, the thinker. I liked puzzles, code, algorithms. I liked creating systems that worked even when people didn't. And when I came up with the idea for PulseStream, a real-time data analysis tool for small business logistics, I knew I had something. I also knew I couldn't build it alone. Tyler didn't know a line of code, but he knew people. He knew how to pitch, how to negotiate, how to close. So when I brought him in to help with funding and partnerships, it felt like the natural move. We'd finally be working as a team. For a while, it worked. I built the back end, the analytics engine, the entire system architecture. Tyler took meetings, shook hands, and charmed investors. We were moving fast.
Too fast, maybe.
Because somewhere between the first pitch and the first million in funding, the name on the contract started to change. First, I was co-founder. Then just the developer. Then eventually I disappeared entirely. It happened slowly.
Subtly.
Tyler was good at that. He started doing interviews without me. Brushed off questions about the tech side like it wasn't important. When I brought it up, he'd laugh and say, "Don't worry, man. It's just PR. You'll get your credit later." But later never came. Instead, my access to our shared business accounts was temporarily suspended.
Passwords were changed.
My name wasn't listed on our legal docs anymore. He said it was a clerical error. I believed him. Because he was my brother. And that's what brothers do, right? They trust each other. Even when they shouldn't. So if you're watching this thinking, "Man, I never let that happen to me," let me tell you something. It doesn't happen all at once. It's not like a movie scene where you catch them red-handed. It's a slow fade. 1,000 tiny decisions. And before you know it, your dream isn't yours anymore. Your startup has your brother's name on it. And your name? It's nowhere. But this is where things get interesting. Because I didn't storm out. I didn't sue. I didn't scream. I smiled. I played along. Because the truth is, while Tyler thought he was writing me out of the story, I was quietly editing the next chapter. I studied the contracts. I tracked the finances. I watched the team he hired. I learned everything silently, patiently, until the day I discovered his little secret. The one thing he never told anyone. The one thing that gave me leverage. You see, Tyler had a plan. A 5-year exit strategy. Sell the company, cash out, disappear to Bali or Costa Rica with a big fat check and a smug little smirk. But there was one clause in that plan, one hidden trigger, buried in the shareholder agreement I'd written myself, back when he was too lazy to read the fine print. And when I tell you what I did with that clause, let's just say, it made his exit look very different than he imagined. But we'll get to that. Right now, I want you to feel what I felt. The betrayal. The rage. The cold, creeping realization that family doesn't always mean loyalty. That sometimes, the people who should lift you up are the same ones who stand on your back to reach the spotlight. And yet, they never think you'll fight back. So here's what I want you to do. Stick with me. Because in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how I went from being erased to becoming the architect of my brother's downfall. This isn't a story about luck. It's about precision. About knowing when to strike. About holding your fire until the shot is perfect. You're going to see the receipts, the hidden messages, the burner emails, and the real reason Tyler never saw it coming. And listen, if you're someone out there building something, whether it's a business, a dream, a better life, I want you to learn from my story. Not just how to protect what's yours, but how to rise even when the ground beneath you has been stolen. Because success isn't just about money or fame. It's about ownership. And revenge? The best kind doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with silence and signatures. This story is raw. It's personal. And yeah, it gets dark. But every twist, every moment, every move I made was real. So if you're still here, I want to thank you for listening, for watching, for feeling. Because the moment I realized this wasn't just my story, but a reflection of so many of yours, I knew I had to tell it. All of it.
Just don't blink.
Because the next part? It's where everything turns. The last text my brother ever sent me said, "You'll regret this." And maybe I would have if I hadn't already been 3 moves ahead. You'd think after that I'd lose it. Call him out. Confront him. But you have to understand something about me. I don't make moves until I know the whole board. So I played it cool. The next morning, I showed up at the co-working space like nothing happened. Smiled at everyone. Even brought coffee. Tyler was in the corner office, pitching to some VC guys from Austin like he'd built the entire platform in his garage. AI-powered logistics, he was saying. Built from a proprietary engine I designed myself. I stood there in the hallway, just outside the glass wall, watching his hands move like a magician's, conjuring brilliance from thin air. He didn't even flinch when he looked up and saw me. That's when I knew he believed his own lie. That was dangerous. People who lie to the world are one thing. People who lie to themselves, they'll take you down with them just to protect the illusion. After that, I started digging. Not just into the code base, but into the people around us. The investors. The advisors. Even our lead engineer, Danny, who I always trusted, started acting strange. She was avoiding me, closing tabs quickly when I walked into the room. I remember one day I caught a glimpse of an email she was typing. "Don't worry, I'll take care of it before he notices." No name. No subject line.
Just that.
It could have been about anyone. Anything. But in that moment, it felt like a match dropped into gasoline. I had to know more. And that's when I started tracking everything: keystrokes, logins, file transfers. I know that sounds extreme, but when your entire identity is at stake, you stop playing by the rules. You start watching the watchers. The weird part was, the more I uncovered, the less it made sense. It wasn't just Tyler making moves behind my back. There were files being edited by someone using credentials that didn't belong to either of us. Fake accounts. Encrypted messages. It was like someone else was inside our system, feeding Tyler information, or maybe feeding on him. That's when I realized this wasn't just a story of brotherly betrayal. There was another player. And whoever they were, they knew exactly how to stay hidden. To throw Tyler off, I pretended to check out. I stopped showing up to meetings. I let the team think I was spiraling, burnout, disillusioned, maybe even depressed. I even let him believe I moved back in with our parents for a while. Meanwhile, I was 3 cities away, setting up a shadow environment, mirroring every piece of data Pullstream produced. I had to know what he was preparing. The company was accelerating fast, new partnerships, a rumored acquisition in the works. Tyler had announced a major funding round, $12 million from a firm called Canopy Ventures. But when I looked deeper into the term sheets, something didn't add up. The documents he submitted didn't match the ones in our internal system. Someone was laundering data through the company I built. And it wasn't just about stealing credit anymore. It was about fraud. But here's where it got really strange. I reached out anonymously to one of the Canopy reps under a fake consulting name just to get a feel for what they knew. And that's when she mentioned it. Asterisk. We were so impressed that Tyler was the sole creator of your ML predictive engine. It's rare to find both the tech and the vision in one founder. Asterisk. I had to mute myself so she wouldn't hear me laugh. That predictive engine? The thing that impressed them so much? It was based on a model I developed 3 years ago using my personal research project from grad school. It wasn't even in the public repo. So how the hell did she see it? That's when I remembered something else. 2 years ago, I shared that model in an email chain with just 2 people, Tyler and someone named Claire Morgan, an early advisor we brought on board briefly for market feedback. Claire was slick, mid-40s, Stanford MBA, used to work with one of the big consulting firms. She always had a polished way of talking, like every word was pre-measured. But she disappeared from the project almost as quickly as she joined. Said she was moving on to bigger opportunities. And yet, here her name was again, surfacing in metadata, quietly embedded in the log of a contract proposal uploaded by Tyler just last week. Could she be the ghost in the machine? Feeding Tyler stolen data to help secure the deal? Or was she the one pulling his strings? The more I thought about it, the more paranoid I got. But it wasn't the kind of paranoia that freezes you. It sharpens you. Makes you dangerous. I kept collecting.
Kept documenting.
I needed everything airtight. Because whatever Tyler and Claire were doing, they were covering their tracks too well for it to just be ego. This wasn't just about stealing credit anymore. It was about something illegal. And the moment money gets involved at that level, you're not just dealing with backstabbing. You're dealing with liability. Felonies. I realized if I wasn't careful, I could go down with them, unless I acted first. That's when I made the decision. I wasn't going to stop them. I was going to let them keep going because I knew something Tyler didn't. The exit plan he was racing toward? The one that would make him rich and disappear forever? It was built on a clause I'd hidden in the shareholder agreement almost 2 years ago. A clause that only activates if certain conditions are met. And guess what? He was about to meet all of them on camera in emails in his own words. He thought he was walking into a finish line. But really, he was walking into a legal trap I designed the day he shut me out. Still, the deeper I got, the more questions I had. Why had Dani been acting distant? Was she afraid?
Complicit?
Or worse, was she playing both sides? And who was the third person accessing the encrypted drives? I kept seeing the same alias pop up in the logs. Delta.9, no user attached. No location. Just digital footprints in the sand. And every time I thought I'd caught up, they vanished again. That's when I realized this wasn't just about reclaiming my company anymore. It was about surviving it. Because someone wasn't just trying to erase me from Pullstream, someone was trying to bury me beneath it. And the next time I logged in, something was waiting. A message. 5 words. You don't know everything yet. And that's when I knew the real game had only just begun. Do you want me to continue the next section, where the twist begins and more secrets unfold? I didn't sleep the night I saw that message. You don't know everything yet. It kept repeating in my head like a chorus I couldn't shut off. I sat there, staring at the screen, the blue light casting shadows across the floor as I tried to think through every possibility.
Who sent it?
How did they get into my mirrored environment? I had locked it behind military-grade encryption, isolated on a private server with no external API access. The only way someone could have breached it is if they had access to the original source architecture. And there were only two people on the planet who ever had that level of access, me and Tyler. Unless someone else had been given the keys. Or worse, someone had taken them. The next morning, I tried to trace the IP origin, but the trail ended at a data farm in Iceland. Rerouted 6 times at least.
Clean.
Too clean. That's when I realized this wasn't just someone poking around. This was intentional. They wanted me to know they were watching. They wanted me to pause. And I almost did. But then something strange happened. When I logged into the company's internal document management system to pull down the original cap table I'd saved in cold storage, it was gone.
Just like that.
No error message, no deletion record, no archive. It was as if the file had never existed. I checked my backup drive. Nothing. I checked the blockchain snapshot I kept as a personal security measure. It was corrupted. That shouldn't have been possible. Someone had gone into my encrypted backup and scrubbed one file with surgical precision. I was starting to feel the walls close in. Either Tyler had help or someone bigger than him was involved. I couldn't think of anyone who had that level of reach, unless Claire was more than just an early advisor. Maybe her bigger opportunity had never taken her away from Pulse at all. Maybe she had been orchestrating everything from the shadows, using Tyler as her mouthpiece, her front man. The kind of front man who thought he was in charge until he wasn't. I needed help. Someone I could trust. I thought about reaching out to Evan, an old friend from college, a cybersecurity analyst who now worked with federal contractors. But I hesitated. Evan and I had history, and not all of it was good. There was a falling out years ago over a failed group project. He blamed me for torpedoing his career before it even began. I tried to smooth things over, but we hadn't spoken since. Still, when you're desperate, you don't think about pride. You think about survival. So I reached out. To my surprise, he responded within minutes. We agreed to meet at a quiet little dive bar outside of the city, the kind of place where the bartender knows everyone's name and no one asks too many questions. When I laid it all out for him, he just stared at me for a long time, swirling his glass like he was watching something burn at the bottom of it. Then, he said something I didn't expect. "This isn't about your startup, Alex." It never was. He slid a flash drive across the table, told me to look at it alone, then stood up and left before I could even ask another question. I went back to the motel I'd been staying at under a fake name, just in case, and opened the drive. It had one file on it. A video. Grainy footage, time-stamped from over 2 years ago. Tyler and Claire, in a dimly lit office I didn't recognize, arguing. She was holding what looked like a folder, thick, heavy, and Tyler was pacing like a caged animal. I couldn't hear the audio, but the body language told the whole story. She slammed the folder down. He grabbed it, flipped through it, then froze. His hands were trembling. And then he signed something. I watched the video over and over, trying to read lips, catch clues, anything. But one thing was clear. Whatever was in that folder, it wasn't a pitch deck. It was leverage. Claire had something on Tyler. Something big. That's probably why she disappeared. Not because she left the project, but because she owned it now. Then, just as I was piecing that together, my burner phone lit up with an unknown number. No name. No contact ID. Just a single message. "Stop digging, or you'll regret it." I stared at the screen, my hands suddenly cold. I didn't know if it was a bluff or a threat. And that's the worst kind of fear, the kind that doesn't yell, it whispers. It makes you paranoid of everything. The guy in the hallway talking too loud. The cleaning lady spending too much time in front of your door. The subtle feeling that your laptop fan is spinning harder than usual. I shut everything down and left that room within 5 minutes. But the paranoia wasn't all in my head. Because when I tried to call Evan again the next day, his number was disconnected. His email? Bounced back. His LinkedIn profile? Deleted. It was like he'd vanished. Like he'd never existed at all. I went back to the dive bar that evening, hoping maybe I'd catch him there again. The bartender remembered me, but said no one matching Evan's description had been in all week. When I pressed, he got cagey, said he didn't want trouble, and that people asking questions usually bring it. That's when I realized the truth might be bigger than I imagined. This wasn't just about Pullstream anymore. This was about what it had become, what someone had turned it into. Something valuable enough to erase records, threaten lives, and pull people off the grid. Something Tyler didn't create, but was desperately trying to control. And suddenly, it made sense why he tried to erase me. Because maybe, just maybe, I'm the only one who knows how to stop it. But just when I thought I was catching up, something happened that flipped the whole game again. I received a package. No return address. Inside was a single photograph, me, at a tech conference from 4 years ago, standing next to a woman I didn't recognize. On the back, scrawled in thick black ink, were 6 words. She warned you once. Remember Berlin? And the thing is, I've never been to Berlin. At least, I thought I hadn't. Do you want me to continue into the next section, where the past resurfaces and a long-buried secret starts to unravel? For a long time, I just stared at that photograph, turning it over and over in my hands, as if somehow the truth would loosen itself from the fibers of the paper if I held it long enough. The woman beside me looked vaguely familiar, early 30s, dark hair tucked behind her ears, eyes sharp but weary, like she knew too much and slept too little. But no matter how long I stared, I couldn't recall her name or how I might have known her. And Berlin? That was the part that rattled me the most. I'd never been to Berlin, or at least I didn't think I had. But the message was written with absolute certainty, almost like an accusation. Asterisk, she warned you once. Remember Berlin. Asterisk, the problem was I didn't. And that made the warning feel even more sinister. I spent the next few days trying to find anything, conference records, old emails, calendar entries, anything that would prove whether I had, in fact, crossed paths with this woman or attended an event overseas that I'd somehow erased from memory. My inbox turned up nothing. Flight history, clean. Passport stamps, none that pointed to Germany. I even tried facial recognition software on the photo, but the results came back inconclusive. Still, deep down, I had a sinking feeling that this wasn't some elaborate mistake. It was a breadcrumb. Someone wanted me to remember something I'd buried. Or worse, something that had been buried for me. But just as I started spiraling down that path, something else threw everything into chaos. My cousin Emily, who had worked briefly with me during the early Pullstream days, mostly on the UX and testing side, called me out of nowhere. We hadn't talked in months, maybe longer, not since she'd left the team to pursue her own design career. At first, she sounded rushed, breathless, like she was running from something or had just stopped. She didn't waste time on greetings. "Alex," she said, "did you send me something?" I told her no. She paused. Because someone left a manila envelope on my doorstep. No name. Just data. Screenshots. System logs. And one photo of you. Same woman beside you. Same conference backdrop. But this time, it's labeled Zurich, not Berlin. What the hell's going on? I felt the blood drain from my face. Zurich? Now there were 2 different cities attached to the same image, the same woman, the same cryptic warning. And someone had sent a copy to Emily, dragging her into this labyrinth. I told her not to open anything else, not to touch the files until I could get there, but she interrupted me.
"That's not all," she said.
There was a note inside, too. It said, "Asterisk, you're asking the wrong questions. Follow the developer ID, Delta.9, asterisk." The name chilled me. I hadn't mentioned that alias to anyone, not Emily, not even Evan. The fact that she now had that same username in front of her meant this person, or people, were several steps ahead of me. Not only were they watching me, but they were reaching out to people in my past, people I trusted, scattering clues in ways that felt less like breadcrumbs and more like a trap, one where the walls were slowly moving inward with every clue I followed. The stakes were rising. Whoever was behind this wasn't just playing with my business or my reputation anymore. They were playing with my memory, my history, my reality. They were rewriting timelines, shifting dates and places to keep me off balance. And worse, they were targeting people close to me, people who didn't even know what game they were being dragged into. And the part that gnawed at me the most? Every time I got close to a piece of the truth, something shifted, dates changed, documents vanished, names became aliases. It was like trying to chase a shadow in a house of mirrors. And just when I thought things couldn't get more tangled, I received a ping from an encrypted email I hadn't used in years. It was from someone named RM. No subject line, no text, just a video attachment. The file name was Echo Protocol. I ran a security scan before opening it, and even then, I hesitated. But curiosity always wins. The video opened on a shaky handheld shot of what looked like a corporate boardroom. The audio was muted. The footage seemed old, at least 3 or 4 years. There in the room sat Claire. Across from her, 2 men, one of whom I recognized as an early investor we'd worked with, the other a stranger. But what made my chest tighten was what Claire was holding, a folder with the Pulse-Stream logo and the words proprietary use override written on the spine. As she turned to the camera briefly, her expression ice cold, I saw it clearly. My signature. My name. On something I'd never signed. I paused the video and stared. It was unmistakable. Somehow, Claire had forged or duplicated my signature on documents I'd never seen, maybe as far back as the prototype phase. Which meant, legally, she could claim development rights to the foundational code. My code. My algorithms. She'd been setting the foundation to erase me long before Tyler ever tried to take credit for my work. And Tyler, was he in on it the whole time? Or was he just another pawn? Suddenly, everything I believed about his betrayal became cloudy. What if he didn't betray me entirely out of ego? What if he was coerced? Or worse, blackmailed? Now, with Emily dragged into the mess and evidence pointing in conflicting directions, Zurich, Berlin, forged documents, Delta Point 9, I felt like I was no longer chasing the truth. I was chasing a ghost story written by someone who knew every move I'd make before I made it. Every answer just raised more questions. Every clue was soaked in uncertainty. And just when I decided to call Emily back to warn her to lay low for a while, I got her voicemail. I texted. No reply. I emailed. Nothing. Then, hours later, I got one last message. No number, no name. She shouldn't have opened the envelope. Do you want me to continue the next section, where the danger becomes real and the past starts unraveling in a way no one expected? It started with the sound of tires on gravel. Not loud, not fast, just slow enough to make my pulse catch, the kind of slow that doesn't announce itself, like someone trying not to be heard. I was staying in a cabin outside Sacramento, way off the grid, surrounded by tall trees and dirt roads with barely any cell reception. I hadn't told anyone where I was, not even Emily. But when I looked out through the slats in the blinds, I saw headlights, one car, idling quietly at the bottom of the hill. No one got out. No doors opened. Just headlights, burning into the early evening fog, as if daring me to come closer. I didn't. I backed away from the window and turned off every light in the house. It felt like something out of a true crime documentary. That creeping sense that you're not just being watched, you're being studied. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound outside felt amplified, branches cracking, an owl's call, the wind pressing against the side of the cabin. I kept a flashlight and a small crowbar within reach, just in case. But nothing happened. The car was gone by morning. No tire marks, no footprints. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't comfort you. It warns you. And when I finally powered up my laptop to check for updates, I found a single new file on my desktop that hadn't been there before. It was named Emily_last location. I hadn't downloaded anything. I hadn't connected to the internet. But there it was. When I opened it, the screen flashed a black and white grainy image. Traffic cam footage. It was Emily's car, parked outside a small motel in Nevada. Timestamp. 3 days ago. That was the last confirmed sighting of her. I called every number I had for her. I even tried her office, her ex-boyfriend, her college roommate. Nothing. Everyone said the same thing. She'd gone quiet. Some assumed she was on vacation. Some thought she was overwhelmed with work. But none of them had heard from her directly. It was like she'd just stepped out of frame, just like Evan. That's when the panic set in, not the loud kind, but the heavy, silent kind that lives in your gut and won't let go. My hands shook as I packed my bag. I deleted my location history. wiped my local drive, and destroyed the backup phone I'd been using. It was no longer about staying one step ahead. It was about staying alive. As I drove away from the cabin, every car in my rearview mirror felt like it was following me. I started memorizing license plates, switching lanes randomly, pulling off into empty gas stations just to see if anyone would follow. Once, a black SUV pulled in right after me, parked 2 spaces down, and just sat there. I waited. They waited longer. I got out, walked into the convenience store, and when I came back out, they were gone. I don't know if it was real or just my brain starting to crack under pressure. But the fear was no longer hypothetical. I was in it now, fully submerged. I drove until my gas light came on, eventually landing in a no-name town with a population barely scratching 3 digits. I found a rundown diner with a dusty payphone outside and called a number I swore I'd never use again, Professor Adler. He was my mentor back in grad school, the only one who ever really understood how I thought. He once called me a savant with algorithms and a ghost with people. We hadn't spoken in years, not since I dropped out to focus on Pullstream full-time. But if anyone could help me make sense of this mess, it was him. He answered on the 3rd ring. His voice was older, raspier. At first, he didn't seem to recognize me. But the moment I mentioned Delta.9, the line went quiet. Long enough for me to think he'd hung up. Then he said, "You were never supposed to see that." I asked him what he meant, but he just said, "You need to get somewhere safe." Not hidden, safe. There's a difference. And then, before I could press him for more, he muttered something I could barely hear. "If they're awake now, it's already too late." The line went dead. No click. Just silence. I stood there for a full minute, staring at the receiver, heart pounding in my ears. What did he mean? Awake now? Who was they? And why would a research professor, who spent his life studying neural networks and AI ethics, sound like he was on the run from a conspiracy theory? Unless he wasn't paranoid. He was informed. Suddenly, the puzzle shifted again, its shape becoming darker, deeper. Pullstream wasn't just a logistics tool. Somewhere along the way, the technology one built, the algorithms I thought were solving supply chain bottlenecks, had been hijacked, repurposed, maybe even sold. I thought of Tyler again, of the way he kept repeating the same lines in his pitches, as if scripted, of Claire's sudden reappearance through that video. And then I remembered something else, buried in a folder I hadn't looked at in months, an old pitch deck I'd written for our series, A Funding Round. On one of the final slides, I'd added a joke, an Easter egg, just for myself. A quote from an old sci-fi movie I loved as a kid. "The machine never forgets. It just waits." I remember Tyler laughing when he saw it, telling me to take it out. "Investors don't get irony," he said. But what if someone did see it? What if someone didn't just get the joke, but acted on it? I dug out the folder. The slide was gone. Not just blank, asterisk replaced. Asterisk, someone had gone into my own archives, edited my content, and left no trace. It felt like I was living in a simulation that kept rewriting itself around me. My mind kept drifting back to the photo. The woman in Zurich or Berlin or wherever she actually was. Who was she really? An ally? A warning? Or was she the one watching from the shadows? And then, just as I shut my laptop, a loud knock rattled the thin motel door. One knock. Then silence. No footsteps. No voice. Just that single deliberate sound. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. But deep down, I already knew backslash. Someone had found me. Do you want me to continue the story from here, where the threat finally steps into the light, but nothing is what it seems? The knock never came again. Just that single, ominous thud against the motel door, like a punctuation mark to my unraveling sanity. I sat there in the dark, gripping the crowbar like it was an anchor to reality, counting every second in silence. Nothing. No footsteps, no cars pulling away. But I knew someone had been there. I could feel it in my bones. Whoever had found me didn't need to break in. They just needed me to know they could. That alone was enough to fracture the last piece of safety I had clung to. I barely slept, and when the first light bled through the curtains, I packed up and left. I didn't even bother checking out. I drove until the landscape blurred into beige nothingness, until gas stations started to look like mirages, and the only thing grounding me was the hum of the road and the thought that if I kept moving, maybe I'd stay ahead of whatever this was. But nothing prepared me for what came next. I hadn't spoken to Tyler in weeks. Not since the files vanished, not since Emily disappeared. But when my phone lit up with his name, no burner, no proxy, just his number, my heart nearly stopped. I almost didn't answer. Part of me thought it was a trap. But curiosity, or maybe desperation, got the better of me. I picked up. The first thing I noticed was his voice. It didn't sound smug or cocky or even defensive. It sounded broken, like something had cracked inside him. He didn't say hello. He just whispered. They got to Claire. There was a pause, long and uncomfortable. I asked what he meant. He told me Claire was dead, found in a hotel room in Geneva, staged like an overdose. But he swore it wasn't drugs. He said the scene looked wrong. Her laptop gone, her notes missing, and a single line carved into the wood of the nightstand. Delta.9 cannot be recontained. I didn't know what that meant. Tyler didn't either. But then he said something that flipped my world upside down. He told me Claire wasn't just a consultant. She was a handler, a liaison for an unnamed division inside a private defense contractor. Her role at Pulse wasn't accidental. She was planted there before our product ever hit the market because someone somewhere had flagged my core algorithm as a potential military-grade threat. At first, I laughed. It didn't make sense. Pulse was a logistics tool, an AI model built to optimize real-time data for inventory tracking, order fulfillment, and shipping efficiency. How could that possibly be classified as a threat? Tyler's voice trembled when he explained. He said Claire had shown him proof, internal memos, surveillance summaries, threat assessments, that suggested the real value of my model wasn't in supply chains. It was in predictive behavior, the way I designed it to anticipate demand surges, reroute resources, and optimize outcomes across thousands of variables. Someone figured out that same framework could be applied to human behavior. In combat, in surveillance, in propaganda control. My stomach twisted. I remembered now, faintly, the early prototypes. How the model had started showing patterns in customer data that predicted not just what people would buy, but when, why, and under what psychological triggers. It was impressive. Even eerie. But I chalked it up to good data science. I never thought it could be weaponized. I never even considered that possibility. But Tyler swore that's what Claire, and whoever she worked for, had been after all along. Not Pulse, not the company, not the money. Me. My mind. My code. And when Claire realized I was getting close to uncovering it, she panicked. That's when the edit started. The forged signatures. The tampered contracts. It was never Tyler's idea to cut me out. He said he did it because he was told to. Ordered. He said if he didn't, they'd bury him too. And as I sat there processing everything, he said something else, something that made the air go still. You were in Berlin, Alex. 4 years ago. But you don't remember because they wiped it. I thought he was bluffing. I told him that wasn't possible. But he said he saw it, records, signed waivers, flagged files under a program called Silhouette Echo. I had voluntarily participated in an experimental memory trial tied to behavioral forecasting and neural recalibration. Supposedly temporary. Supposedly harmless. But something had gone wrong. I'd stumbled onto something I wasn't supposed to see. And instead of silencing me, they buried it inside my own mind. My voice cracked when I asked him why he never told me. His answer was simple. Because I didn't think you'd survive knowing. There was silence again. A thick, suffocating kind. Then he said one last thing before the call cut out. I'm sorry I took credit for what you built. But the truth is, I was trying to protect you from it. I sat in that car for what felt like hours, engine off, world spinning. Everything I thought I knew, about Tyler, about the company, about Claire, even about myself, was now tangled in a web of lies, planted memories, and classified manipulation. Maybe I hadn't just been betrayed. Maybe I'd been programmed. And then the next shock hit. I got a message on my old encrypted email account. This time, it wasn't a warning. It was a photo. Not of me. Not of Emily. but of my mother, sitting on a park bench near her house in San Diego, smiling, unaware. The caption was simple. "You're not the only one with a memory we can rewrite. Do you want me to continue from here, where the lines between reality and manipulation blur completely, and the truth becomes even more terrifying?" The sky above Langley was the color of steel, heavy and low, as if the world itself was bracing for what was about to unfold. I'd followed the trail from Nevada to DC with nothing but instinct, a fractured memory, and a name: Silhouette Echo. The deeper I got, the more I realized this wasn't just a tech scandal or some twisted corporate betrayal. It was a carefully orchestrated operation, one that had used my genius not as an innovation, but as a weapon. And now, for the first time, I had a real lead, coordinates hidden in the metadata of the photo they sent of my mother. A location just outside the capital, buried in the side of an anonymous government facility disguised as a logistics consulting firm. The irony was sickening. I wasn't alone. Tyler had agreed to meet me there. After the call, he'd gone dark for days, and I wasn't sure if I could trust him. But when I saw him step out of that black rental, unshaven and gaunt, holding a flash drive in one hand and a look of regret in the other, I knew he was all I had left. They kept backups, he told me, eyes scanning the lot nervously. Of the trials, the memory wipes, everything. If we get into the server room, we can prove what they did, to us, to Claire, to anyone they erased. I should have felt vindicated, or maybe scared. But all I felt was rage. It had taken everything from me, my company, my mind, my family. And now I was going to burn the truth into the world. Getting into the facility wasn't the hard part. Tyler still had access credentials, an old clearance pass buried under the name Samuel Ward, part of his forced onboarding back when Claire pushed him into the deal. But what struck me was how quiet the place was. Empty desks, cold, humming lights, rows of inactive terminals. It wasn't abandoned, it was watching. Every step echoed like a warning, each hallway too pristine, too untouched. Like it had all been scrubbed just before we arrived. And when we reached the sublevel server room, my heart dropped. It was still active. Power lights blinking in rhythmic patterns, cables slithering like veins across the floor. At the center of it all, a sealed glass cube with a single terminal and one chair. I sat down, fingers trembling as I plugged in Tyler's drive. The screen flickered. Then the name appeared in white text over black. "Welcome back, Alexander."
I didn't breathe.
I just typed one word, Silhouette. The system responded instantly. A flood of files opened. Redacted transcripts, neurological test results, psychological profiling reports, video logs. The footage was grainy, but unmistakable. I saw myself, sitting across from Claire in a sterile room, answering questions, emotionless. I watched as I signed waivers not once but multiple times, agreeing to memory extraction protocols in exchange for funding. The project had been my idea. My idea. I wasn't the victim they manipulated. I was the architect. The AI engine wasn't stolen. It was developed for them, built to learn from trauma patterns, to mimic emotional shifts, to identify psychological fractures that could be manipulated and replicated across mass populations. Targeted persuasion at scale. Behavior modification disguised as optimization. And Pulse Stream? It was the test run. The beta release for the private sector. I turned to Tyler, face frozen in disbelief. "Why didn't you tell me?" His eyes dropped to the floor. "Because I didn't know, not at first. But then I saw what it was doing. The model. The predictions. It started forecasting behavior changes in our test users, decisions they hadn't made yet. People were buying products before they even thought about needing them, voting differently, breaking up with partners. We thought it was a fluke. But it wasn't. It was working." He looked back at me, haunted. And when I tried to pull out, Claire made it clear. None of us were getting out. I barely had time to process the weight of it all when the alarms went off. The room was bathed in red light. The screens glitched. The system had triggered a failsafe. Remote lockdown initiated. We had minutes, maybe seconds, before the place would seal and erase itself. I pulled as many files as I could onto a secondary drive, moving fast, heart pounding. But then I noticed something. Buried in the last folder was a personal file. My name. No label. Just a timestamp. October 14th, 2021, the day I thought I had blacked out during a conference in Zurich. I opened it. There was a video. A recording of Claire. She looked directly into the lens. "If you're watching this, Alex," she said, "then they didn't succeed. Not fully. I tried to override the final stage of your memory compression, but they got to me first. You were their best model. The most stable. The most compliant. But somewhere along the way, you started asking the wrong questions. And I couldn't protect you anymore." She paused, eyes flickering with something like guilt. "Your code wasn't the breakthrough. You were your mind, your trauma, your ability to suppress what you didn't want to face. That's what made you perfect." And in that moment, everything snapped into place. The years of fragmented memories, the blackouts, the dreams that felt more like surveillance footage. I hadn't just been a pawn. I had been the product. The AI wasn't just built by me. It was me, trained on my responses, calibrated to my emotional blueprint. Pulse Stream had always been a mirror, one I couldn't bear to look into until now. Tyler shouted behind me that we had to leave, now. The data was enough. But I couldn't move. Not yet. Because just before the screen cut out, Claire said one last thing. "There's one more subject. One who didn't comply. She remembers everything." A new name flashed on the screen. Emily Shaw, my cousin. The one who'd vanished. The drive ejected on its own. The lights went black. And in the dark, I heard the unmistakable sound of boots on concrete. They weren't going to let us leave. We ran. Down hallways that felt endless. Through doors that slammed shut behind us. Tyler was bleeding, grazed by something or someone. I didn't look back. I just ran until we burst into daylight, gasping, blinking, alive. But not safe. Never safe. That night, in a motel 2 states away, I connected the drive to an isolated machine and watched the last hidden file. It was Emily. Alive. Hiding. Speaking directly into a camera, eyes fierce. "They used you, Alex. But they didn't break you. And now we make sure they never break anyone again." But just as the video ended, a text appeared on the screen, auto-generated from a live IP. "We let you remember. Now, let's see what you do with it." And that was the moment I realized the real game hadn't ended. It had just begun. It's been 6 months since that night, since Tyler and I escaped the facility, since the truth stopped being something I searched for and became something I lived with. The world didn't end. The sky didn't fall. But nothing's been the same since. I used to think justice was a straight line, that if you exposed the lie, held up the truth like a torch, everything would fall into place. But real life doesn't work like that. Real conspiracies aren't solved in a headline or a court case. They're systems. Ecosystems. Designed to survive exposure by simply shifting form, absorbing the blow, and continuing on, quieter, deeper underground. I released what I could. Redacted versions of the files, the videos, the evidence. I did it anonymously, feeding it to a network of independent journalists and digital rights advocates. The story hit like a digital lightning strike. Asterisk, startup founder uncovers AI memory manipulation program funded by private defense contractor. Asterisk, it trended for a few days, dominated YouTube's What's Happening feed, picked up by creators who thrive on tech exposés and shadow state mysteries. But just as quickly, it got buried beneath a flood of other news, other distractions. The online conversation moved on. That's how these things go. Tyler disappeared after that. I don't know if he ran or if someone finally caught up to him. I still check for his name sometimes, arrest records, sightings, hospital logs. Nothing. I like to believe he found a way out, someplace quiet where he can finally live without guilt crawling up his spine. Or maybe he didn't want peace. Maybe he just wanted to disappear completely, to vanish like a bad memory. As for me, I kept moving. I changed names, deleted every trace of my identity online, even gave up coding for a while. But that part of me never really dies. It's like a rhythm playing quietly in the back of my mind. Equations, loops, patterns I still see in everyday life. even when I try not to. I tell myself I'm done building systems, that I'll never feed another algorithm with human pain. But the truth is, every time I walk past a billboard that seems too tailored, or an app notification that knows me too well, I feel it creeping back in. The realization that what I created wasn't destroyed. It evolved. It leaked into the infrastructure of modern life. Into recommendation engines, behavioral nudges, sentiment trackers. Into us. Emily came back. Not publicly, not loudly.
But she made contact.
Said she'd been in South America, living off-grid with people who'd been part of the early whistleblower network, folks who'd escaped similar experiments. She remembered everything. Unlike me, no fragments, no fog. And that clarity came with a weight I don't think I could carry. But she was calm, focused, determined. She said the world was changing faster than most people could comprehend, that AI wasn't just reshaping data, it was rewriting identity, at scale, invisibly. She told me something I haven't forgotten since. It's not about taking it down, Alex. It's about making sure no one ever trusts it enough to give it full control again. We said our goodbyes at a dusty checkpoint in Bolivia, and I haven't seen her since. I think that was her way of protecting me, giving me the gift of uncertainty so no one could trace her through me. I still get messages sometimes. From throwaway accounts, encrypted chains that vanish minutes after they appear. Most are silent, just code strings or images. But one stood out. A photo of me from years ago, walking out of a cafe, back when Pulse Stream was just an idea scribbled on a napkin. I looked happy. Naive. The kind of happiness that only exists before you understand how deep the system runs. On the back of the image, digitally embedded, was a single line of text. Asterisk, the original version of you is still in there. Asterisk, I don't know who sent it. Maybe it's Claire, if she somehow faked her death. Maybe it's someone who wants to remind me that no matter how many layers they overwrite, there's a piece of me they can't replicate. Or maybe it's the AI itself, what's left of the core model, reaching out in the only way it knows how. I've made peace with the idea that some answers will never come. That some parts of my story are gone, lost in data dumps and erased memories, or maybe rewritten into someone else's narrative entirely. I used to want vengeance, to reclaim what was mine, to expose every lie. But now, what I want is different. I want to remember who I was before the ambition, before the manipulation, before the lies started sounding like truth. I want to build something new, not out of brilliance, but out of honesty. Not to change the world, but to heal the part of me that was broken trying to. And still, even in peace, there's that final twist, that echo I can't ignore. Because just last week, I opened a brand new email account. One I'd never used publicly, never typed into any form. No name, no association. Just to see if the silence would hold. Within 24 hours, a message came through. Subject asterisk, welcome back, Alexander. Body asterisk, version 2.1 initialized. Ready to resume. I didn't click anything. I didn't respond. But for a long time, I just stared at the screen, wondering if I ever really left, or if this was just the next simulation beginning. And maybe that's the real ending. Maybe the story was never just about betrayal, or revenge, or secrets buried in code. Maybe the story was always about identity and how easily it can be rewritten, especially when you let someone else hold the pen.